Hi, this is Jeff in College of Circles. In this video, I'll be finishing my revisions for first level spells. The revisions I propose have two goals. First, to create more distinction between classes, and second, to rebalance spells. This rebalance is not intended to nerf players, as I can always adjust difficulties of encounters on my end, but rather to ensure that every spell has a real purpose in the game, and that choosing spells is less about solving a math problem to find the most powerful spell, and more about finding the best spells to represent your character. If you are enjoying this content, please do me a favor and subscribe to this channel. And if you really like it, go ahead and tell me by hitting that like button. When I finish my series on spell revisions, I will be doing a follow-up video recapping comments I have received and the changes I would make to my revisions after receiving feedback from viewers like you. Now that the intro is over, here are my 10 more-ish revisions for first level spells.
1.
We start with a very simple addition to a spell. Color Spray should be on the bard list. This feels like a poor man's version of Hypnotic Pattern, and someone running around throwing colors in the air just screams bard to me.
2.
Our next spell is a popular choice for first level mages, and then quickly falls off spell lists due to an easily misunderstood upcasting description. Witch Bolt sends an arc of lightning between the caster and target, dealing 1d12 lightning damage on a hit. With concentration, the caster can maintain the electric charge and do an additional 1d12 automatic damage with an action on subsequent turns. Now this really helps to stretch out limited spell slots early in the game. The problem comes in the first time someone tries to upcast it. When upcasted, it deals an additional 1d12 for each spell slot level above first, but only on the initial hit. Subsequent rounds, it only deals 1d12, or an average of 6.5 damage per round. Now, I've made the mistake of thinking the additional d12s were every round, and just about every person I've seen use this thought the same. The 6.5 average damage is just not enough to warrant the concentration required or the higher level spell slot. My solution is one additional clause and would read like this. At higher levels, when you cast a spell using a spell slot of second or higher, the initial damages increases by 1d12 for each slot level above first, and the targeted creature has disadvantage on any attacks made by it, unless it is immune to lightning damage. Now, I believe this gives the caster suitable motivation to upcast it without breaking the game with consistent automatic damage, and a second level is comparable to Heat Metal, but different enough that it doesn't negate that spell.
3.
The next spell that needs to be fixed doesn't actually have anything wrong with it, but rather it has an interaction with another rule that causes a lot of unnecessary confusion. Magic Missile creates 3 glowing darts that automatically hit a target you can see within range, dealing 1d4 plus 1 damage per dart. Almost everyone assumes that you roll a separate dice for each dart. However, the very stupid but correct rules as written interpretation is that you roll 1d4 one time and apply that same damage to each missile. Page 196 of the player's handbook, if a spell or other effect deals damage to more than one target at the same time, roll the damage once for all of them. And Magic Missile specifies that each missile hits simultaneously, so the page 196 rule applies to it. This is supported by Jeremy Crawford in his tweet, but he also said, rules as intended, do what you want. Let's make that raw and just replace simultaneously with automatically, problem solved.
4.
Jumping in 5th edition is a bit of a mess. I rarely see it come up, so when I do, I almost always have to look at my DM screen to remind myself of the rules. A running long jump equals strength score or half for a standing long jump. High jump uses strength modifier. You can outstretch your arms half your height. A foot of jumping costs a foot of movement speed. Why are we using strength in the first place? How is a muscle-bound orc barbarian or a paladin and plate mail able to jump further than an acrobatic ranger or rogue? The jumping rules make no sense mechanically and even less sense thematically. And then when you cast the spell jump, multiply all of that not making sense by 3, but don't exceed your movement speed while doing so. I think I've seen someone cast jump once in 3 years. Fixing it to be an actually useful spell is difficult because movement is so easily exploitable. Overtune jump, and you could end up with 10 castings of Misty Step. Leave it as is, and it's just too situational to be a regular on anyone's spell list. So what to do? Now here's my attempt, thanks to the Heron Gaunt. You touch a willing creature. Once per turn for the duration, that creature can jump a number of feet equal to 5 times your proficiency bonus. The target can only jump if its movement speed is greater than 0. Maybe this is better, let me know in the comments.
5,
As soon as Silvery Barbs came out, it was one of the most commonly banned spells. Now really, I do not have a problem with Silvery Barbs, but we do need to get rid of the Giving Advantage Rider effect. Settle down spell, you're already doing enough.
6,
If Wizards of the Coast ever listen to me, this particular change would probably hurt some feelings. Shield is good, and really good, sometimes too good. It either needs to be nerfed or cost more to use. I elect the latter, and if it were up to me, Shield would require concentration. You want that plus 5 AC, you gotta give up that hold monster. The other route I considered was to tie the AC bonus to spell level. Plus 2 AC at level 1, plus 1 for every spell slot above first used to cast it.
7,
Cure Wounds used to be the iconic healing spell in Dungeons & Dragons. Then Healing Word came along and pushed Cure Wounds to most spell lists' back pages. I would keep Healing Word as it is, as I do believe there is a place for healing at a distance, but Cure Wounds needs to be buffed to compete with Healing Word and to make an in-combat healing more effective. The idea of a cleric channeling the power of the divines to heal someone makes more sense to me than someone being able to heal from a dragon's fire breath by just sitting and chilling for an hour. But that's a topic for another time. I would buff Cure Wounds by changing it to a D12 and adding your spellcasting modifier for each spell level used when upcasting. This is still significantly weaker than other healing spells. Even at 9th level, Cure Wounds would only heal for an average 103 hit points, compared to all hit points from Power Word Heal or 700 hit points for Mass Heal. I still wouldn't rate Cure Wounds as a must-have, but at least it wouldn't be a must-ignore.
8,
Earth Tremor sucks, and I can't see any reason for anyone to ever take it as a spell when Thunderwave is already available. Earth Tremor has a range and area of 10 feet, and on a failed dex save causes a measly 1d6 of bludgeoning damage, and any creature in the affected area falls prone. That would be a max of 4 medium-sized creatures, taking an average 3.5 points of damage and falling prone. Thunderwave affects a 15-foot cube, and on a failed save does 2d8 thunder damage while pushing affected creatures back 10 feet. That's a maximum of 9 medium-sized creatures, taking an average of 9 points of damage, and the difference between being pushed 10 feet or falling prone is usually just 5 feet of movement speed. And of course, advantage for melee attacks if the creature is still prone, but also disadvantage on ranged attacks. There is also an issue with how range and area are worded, and that the range of self was removed when it was reprinted in Xanathar's. If it was still centered on self, it would actually target a much larger area. That is not how I understand the spell as it is written on D&D Beyond. To fix Earth Tremor, option 1 is to just remove it. But I like the image this spell conjures up, and the idea of making the ground shake and enemies fall is iconic in fantasy. So here's what I propose. Make it a druid-only spell, and like Magic Missile, no saving throw. Anyone on the ground in the affected area falls prone and automatically takes the damage, using the spell damage rule from page 196 of the Player's Handbook. Reduce the damage to 1d4, increasing by 1d4 for each spell slot level above first. Also, for every 2 spell slots above first, the range and affected area increases by 5 feet.
9,
There are 3 first level detection spells: Detect Magic, Detect Evil and Good, and Detect Poison and Disease. Detect Magic is a must-have spell for every party at all levels of the game. I'm not touching it. The other 2 are extremely situational and rarely need to be prepared, except for those few times when they would be really useful, in which case they never are prepared, but you could prepare them after a long rest, and if you do happen to have them prepared when you need them, it's almost a cheat code. Now let's tackle Detect Evil and Good first. and I say we just remove it altogether. Paladins can already do 60% of what this spell does as an action with Divine Sense. Also, the notion of evil and good in itself is outdated, and why would Fae or elementals give off a specific aura of good or evil? Let Paladins use Divine Sense, and maybe consider giving Rangers and Druids a similar ability for detecting elementals and Fae. Now for Detect Poison and Disease, I can see where this spell would come in handy and when you're playing as a cleric going into a town stricken with a plague, or a ranger inspecting food sources, but for the most part, these things could be handled in a more narratively satisfying way with ability checks. So, like Detect Evil and Good, I say we just remove Detect Poison and Disease altogether and actually bring purpose to medicine and nature checks.
10,
Alright, we finish with what is, in my opinion, one of the most potentially overrated spells in the game, at least at low level. Sleep is an enchantment spell that makes enemies fall unconscious, the most debilitating effect in the game. The problem is, because it is so potentially powerful, it is tuned down to the point of being effectively useless. It has a range of 90 feet and covers an area of 20 feet from a point of your choice within range. You roll 5d8 and use that result to represent how many hit points of enemies are affected, starting with enemies with the lowest hit points and working your way up. Upcasting increases the hit point effective by 2d8 for spell slot level above first. Even at low level, you are only likely to take out the smallest enemies on the board, and there is a good chance you won't have any effect on even CR1 creatures. At level 1, the average effect is 23.5 worth of hit points, and according to the DMG, we can expect a CR1 monster to have an average of 71 to 85 hit points. The two common uses of sleep are to take out a group of obviously low-level minions so the party can concentrate on the leader, or to finish off the biggest monster once you get its hit points whittled down. Even with these tactics, the area affected is too small to ensure getting all of the minions. If you've already whittled the baddie down this far, he is probably going to die anyways. And also, this spell scales extremely poorly. The general consensus on sleep is that it is a good to must-have spell at low level, but should be swapped out soon after. In my experience, I've played with over 100 people and have only cast sleep or seen it cast maybe half a dozen times. This spell needs some help, so here's my attempt. Increase the dice to d12s. On upcasting, increase the area affected by 5 feet per spell level used, and require concentration to keep it from being broken. Even with the increase, I'm not sure that concentration should be required, but for now we'll say it is. On this graph, the green line shows how many hit points per spell level we would expect on average from sleep. The blue line shows what we would expect if we increased it to d12s. The red line shows, according to the DMG, the low end of the average range of hit points for a monster whose CR matches the minimum character level for each spell level. In order to use a 5th level spell slot, the character must be at least 9th level, so I used a CR9 monster for comparison to a 5th level spell slot. As you can see, even with this buff, monsters will still need to be whittled down, but I do believe this is an improvement. And the increased area is to ensure those pesky minions at high level are actually in the zone. Alright, that was part 2 of my Dungeons & Dragons first level spells revisions. As always, I'm Jeff. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on these changes, and be sure to check out my revisions for second level spells, which will be coming soon.